Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and also welcome back to Masterclass, a series of videos which are not designed for the beginning World of Tanks player, but somebody who's already got a good grasp on the tank. If you're looking for the basics on the M48A5 Patton, go and check out my full tank review on that one. Today's video is going to present at least a method that has worked for me to be able to take my Patton to the next level. So what do you really need to know about the M48A5 Patton? Well, this vehicle is a great all-rounder. There's practically nothing about this vehicle that is lackluster, apart from arguably its camera rating and the vehicle's top speed. That in turn kind of makes this tank a bit of an enigma. If it can do anything, then why shouldn't you do well inside the tank? But as always is the issue with these all-rounders, sometimes they just don't have the ability to be able to excel in certain areas to be able to outplay their opponents. Consequently, the M48A5 Patton, if we take a look at the vehicle's recent win ratio in the last 30 days, at least on the European server, is down at just over 48. Now that's not nearly as bad as the other four below it. It arguably sits as the best of the worst, or should we say the bottom of the mid-range with regards to being competitive. Personally for me, I've been in love with this tank for years. Here are my most played vehicles, and as you can see there's only 3 tanks in the game which I've played over 1,000 games in, and the M48 is far and above the other two, the Batchat and the Comet. However, it's only recently with Equipment 2.0 that I've been able to customize the vehicle in a way to really take it to that next level. And that is maintaining all of the vehicle's holistic strengths while also trying to mitigate some of its extreme weaknesses. So how exactly have I done this? Well, firstly, in both of my equipment builds for the M48A5 Patton, I am taking a turbocharger. I feel that it is the slowest tier 10 medium tank, and it is one of the key attributes that holds it back from being able to contest the early positions and get using the vehicle's rather substantial armor. With a turbo inside the mobility slot, the vehicle is now limited to 50 kilometers an hour. However, as a versatile medium tank, on the 7th field mod, you can actually sacrifice a little bit of the view range of the vehicle to further increase its top speed limit by an additional 2 kilometers, meaning that the M48A5 Patton, with regular equipment at least, caps out at 52 kilometers an hour. And the vehicle has a very good power to weight ratio, which means that it's going to be able to maintain this on all surfaces, apart from probably soft. I cannot stress how different a Patton that's lumbering around at 45 kilometers an hour feels compared to one that can achieve 52 kilometers an hour. And due to the vehicle's impressive gun handling when moving and turning the turret, I think this is one of the candidates for dropping vertical stabilizers to invest in other pieces of equipment, like that turbo. In addition to this turbo, to try and mitigate some of the Patton's awful concealment, I've taken anti-reflective headlight coating on this tank. Sure, it's going to make my reverse speed a little bit worse, but I'm still able to go backwards at 21 kilometers an hour because of the turbocharger. This means that apart from the sacrifice of 5% repair speed on my tracks, that my concealment on this vehicle is now up to 18 when moving and 22 when stationary. That is very decent for such a large lumbering tank that has almost pseudo-heavy armor, but can still maintain at least reasonable camera rating, at least double of what any other heavy tank can achieve. I counter this loss of the suspension repair speed by taking lightweight support rollers, which will actually decrease my suspension durability, but increase its repair speed and also increase my tank's hull traverse speed. This means that I'm able to get the suspension repair speed down to nearly 5 seconds, albeit while using a large repair kit and having a full repair crew. Now, a lot of you might be questioning, why would you decrease the durability of your suspension? Well, that's because after a suspension has been damaged, it actually only gets repaired up to about 75% of its initial durability, which means that, at least at high tiers, it doesn't really matter what shoots your yellow tracks, they're always going to be taking them off. But by taking the lightweight support rollers, we can get those tracks back up more frequently to stop the nightmare scenario where somebody can keep you tracked on a corner, and the only kind of vehicles that are going to be able to hold you in place are autoloaders or Soviet medium tanks that are using full rate of fire increases. Because we've improved the hull traverse speed and because the Patton has a naturally good one anyway, I'm also taking the module durability increase, which means that even if we're ammo racked or our gun is damaged, it's not going to be the end of the world. And considering how darn good the vehicle's traverse speeds are, even with this, and also how frequently the Patton loses its gun and its ammo rack, this can help to be able to mitigate that. Finally, I'm going to be taking an improved sight because accuracy is better than dispersion, at least in my opinion. So the two equipment builds that I'm going to have for the M48A5 Patton is a damage per minute and a mobility build, where I'm taking a gun rammer, vents inside the scouting slot, which I've added with the 6th field mod, and also the turbocharger. My second build on this tank is actually a little bit funky. I'm going to be dropping the gun rammer and instead taking the commander's vision system. Now, I did this instead of dropping the turbo because I truly feel that getting into position on those kind of maps where you need to have the commander's vision system to be able to spot the bushes on the Patton outweighs the DPM increase. But if you don't agree with me and you don't mind being a little bit slower on those kind of maps, then I'd probably recommend dropping out the turbo and instead using a gun rammer. But this is what works for me. Finally, I want to address the view range on the M48A5 Patton, and that is that even without a premium consumable, you can still manage to achieve over 450 meters view range without using coated optics on this tank, even if you choose to use the heavy gauge nozzles modification. Now, free-to-play players out there who don't have the luxury of using a premium consumable, who are concerned about dropping the view range that much, might want to replace the commander's vision system with coated optics, or alternatively, not take the heavy gauge nozzles to begin with. However, personally, I think I would rather have 450 meters view range and a commander's vision system for those kind of maps than having 490 meters view range and not having the commander's vision system. Anyway, that is my all-round fast combat build for the M48A5 Patton. Let's give it a test on the battlefield. Alright, so we're loading in on a very nice matchup here on Serene Coast, and clearly I'm not going to take the commander's vision system on a map like this. We're going to go with our gun rammer, vents, and we're going to be using a turbo as well. Now, in a matchup like this, I want to get stuck in as quickly as I possibly can. I warn you that I don't have all of the field mods currently inside this game, and so my top speed limit is still going to be limited at 50 rather than the 52 which I eventually had on my final Patton build. As all of you know, it takes a long time to be able to grind out that 250,000 experience on all of your vehicles without just throwing your credit card at the screen, right? Okay, so the Patton. Obviously, I want to take that northwestern corner. The only real kind of tanks that I'm worried about are probably the CS63 going there. And so I don't want to mess around. I don't want to take too long on that flank. The last thing that you want to do is allow the enemies to create a decent defense in the middle of the map and also to be able to attack along the east. Obviously, you have to play this game very differently if there are vehicles like the Chieftain or the M48 on the enemy team, or you've got a Kranvang, anything like that. Don't feel that you can just go up here and be able to hard push it if there are going to be those kind of tanks. So you'll see that just how slow the Patton felt getting into position. We were going upslope slightly there at 48 kilometers an hour. Just wish I'd had that final field mod. We would have literally got there 4% faster. That is a big difference. 2 kilometers an hour for a Patton to be able to go 4% faster, but oh, Mr. Borask, I think you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Fortunate for me that we get to throw our weight around at the start of this game. And we managed to ram the Borask for 824. What a shame we didn't do it just a little bit higher, and then we could have got the final few hit points off the Borask and maybe avoided the damage from the artillery. What a lot of people don't realize is this is quite a heavy tank. It weighs 47 tons. And one of the things that stopped the M48 from being able to ram is that it just didn't really have the top speed to be able to generate the G's to be able to pick apart its opponents in that way. Now, I'm not saying that ramming in the M48 is always a good thing, but you'll be surprised, especially with these flashy fast tanks that don't really have so much armor and don't have so much weight behind them, what you can do to them. So don't be afraid to pressure them, and even if you get up into kind of close quarters combat in the M48, its armor isn't horrendous. Now let me talk about, it's more of a tank review thing, but I want to highlight also how important it is to realize how the side of the Patton is like a boat-shaped hull. it's very well angled. And so that means that with the Patton hull, you actually want to over-angle this tank. Not quite at 45 degrees. Near enough. Probably want to be angling it at about 40 degrees to be able to get the most protection. Now, you're never going to be like something of a 430U where you're going to be completely impervious to certain rounds and certain positions. But by at least making the most of your armor, you can really surprise your opponents. And by pressuring them and hopefully using your better rate of fire, your better gun handling to be able to take the fight to them in that way, you'll be surprised how long you can survive in the combat and be able to just hopefully get through it and pick them apart. So in this kind of a scenario, it's just about using the gun depression of the Patton to work that ridgeline to try and keep the vision on the vehicles at the back. But you know what? Up to 2,300 damage in the first couple of minutes in this game, I don't want to hang around. I want to take the fight to the enemy team. And the IS-5 unfortunately managed to get me, but we're able to just out-DPM them right now. I'm going to try and make my way back in here and hope that he shoots someone else. Thank you very much to the STA-1 on my team who manages to finish them off. Look at the lovely gun handling of the Patton. Even without vertical stabilizers, we are clutching shots. I don't really feel the need to stop and aim too much in this vehicle. But be warned, even with a boost to the accuracy of this vehicle with the 3rd or the 4th field mod, it's definitely not the most accurate vehicle you're going to play. Look at that, we actually absorbed a gold round there from the Progetto 54 from our side, again because of that boat-shaped hull. Now the Patton's armor is going to help us against the Gorilla, and oh dear, Mr. Gorilla, don't really want to be bouncing on this kind of a tank. Hoping that the STA-1's going to help me out here. I'm worried about getting shot from the side. He puts a great shot in. I think a high explosive round there for 311, almost certain that was an HE round. Looks like this STA-1 is a decent player, and they're helping me out in this situation. So it's just about throwing your weight around. Literally in the case of the Borask, but also just by being aggressive in this scenario. I'm hoping that we manage to shut down the Progetto 54 here, but he just won't go away. And that means that we're going to lose another 300 hit points. I'm just going to stop and aim. If they manage to get us in that scenario, whatever, let the chips fall where they may. And that's how I love to play my M48A5 Patton. Be aggressive. Sometimes your armor will work, sometimes your armor won't work, but hopefully you can out-muscle your opponents with DPM. And one of the things that I love about this vehicle is even if you hadn't anticipated that there's going to be an artillery in the corner, that this thing's all-round armor protects you from surprises. It protects you from punishment against the artillery. And I don't mind being cheeky on this ridgeline. Sure, I've got a bit of a weak point on top of the tank, but if there's one thing I would recommend to all of you, it's to kind of just get into a I don't care kind of mentality for the M48A5 Patton. Just to try and pressure your opponents to take the fight to them, to be aggressive, and to let the chips fall where they may. I'm just building up such a good relationship here with this STA-1. I'm lucky that the Leopard is undergunned and is using what looks like the 90mm. We're going to go and face hug the Leopard to put some more pressure on them. I'm going to low roll. But my buddy in the STA-1's actually going to look after me. And within 6 minutes of this game, we've picked up 4 kills and we've dealt 6,700 damage. We have been the all-round M48A5 Patton. And this is why this is one of the tanks that I've played the most in the game. It's this all-purpose vehicle. When you think about it, it was kind of one of the original heavies and that was still mobile. Of course, now in 2021, there are a lot of heavy tanks that kind of do what the M48A5 has always been doing. Alright, so now we're loading in on Prokhorovka. What kind of equipment do you think I'm going to use on possibly the bushiest of bushy maps? Well, of course, I'm going to do Control 1, and I'm going to be able to use the Commander's Vision System. Now, the turbo is going to really help to being able to use mobility once we're in that position, and also being able to get there. And because of that awesome 420 meters base view range, and situation awareness, recon, and Brothers-at-Arms, and the premium consumable, 470 meters is going to be absolutely amazing with the Commander's Vision System for a medium tank. And there are so few medium tanks in the game that have the luxury of getting this much view range. And by sacrificing a little bit of it to be able to get the extra 2 kilometers, this vehicle is kind of as fast as something like a T-62A, even if that tank was using coated optics and it would still have the same kind of vision. All right, so spoilers. This game is going to be 15 minutes long and it's going to be a draw. Well, why would you say that, Mr. QuickyBaby? Well, it's because I'm going to do exactly what I did in the Pershing the other day. If you were watching my video where I showed you one position that we're going to use, where we're just going to be able to have a real big impact in the game. Unfortunately, it's going to be one of those kind of games where no matter how hard we tried, we were never able to do enough to be able to break the camp, and there was no opportunity to be able to flank around. That is what happens on Prokhorovka quite often, and so it's just about trying to maximize, I guess, your outcome in the game, which is trying to get as much damage, as much spotting, and as you're going to see at the end of this battle, this build is able to just absolutely rock these ridge lines. Let me clarify how awesome it is to have the turbocharger on this vehicle to be able to go backwards at a decent speed, even when you sacrifice it to gain other areas in the field mod, and also how awesome it is to have that turret armor. Take a look at what we've managed to block here. We've blocked 2,800 damage. We've dealt 5,600 damage, and we're up to 4,400 assistance. And with 30 seconds left on the game, I decided that I might as well go and ram the Kranvang, because otherwise I thought he was going to auto-load on me. So we're joining a battle on airfield, about 2.5 minutes or 3.5 minutes into the game, where not too much has happened. We managed to get a couple of shots in across the middle of the map and a little bit of spotting as well, but it hasn't really mattered too much. What I want to show in this game is just how good the M48 is at being under pressure. We've had a T110E3 that for the last 2 minutes has pretty much just been sitting in that position and aiming up at me. Usually in this scenario, you'd have a tank destroyer that was maybe trying to put some pressure plays up from this location, but unfortunately that isn't the case. Or maybe even a turreted heavy tank that would try and push around that corner. I'm going to just try and hope that the T110E3 is not going to be able to go through our side armor, which remember is very boaty on this tank. And finally it looks like the T110E3 on my team is able to get a shot into the back of the E3 there. I want to show just how the M48 is under pressure and how awesome it is when it actually manages to explode out from a position. Okay, there we go. That's what I needed to hear, and that is that the gold round from the T110E3 has ricocheted off us. So I think, what shall I do? Shall I hang back here any longer? Why would I wait for him to reload and get lucky? Well, I need to get lucky again. So we're going to push, we're going to get some spotting, get some damage in on the M48, we're going to spot a T100LT who's been pesky and locking us down from behind those bushes, and now finally I'm in a position where I can hopefully take the fight to the T110E3 that has been harassing us for the last few minutes. We have the vision there and a little bit of support to be able to get out the entirety of that T100LT, and suddenly I'm starting to feel a little bit chipper in this game. But I'm also noticing that the game is rapidly starting to speed up, and we're going to have to take the fight to the enemy team quickly as well. So I hear the T110E3 fire, and oh, that is just going to give me an awesome window of opportunity. The only vehicle that could possibly be up on the north will be the Stridsvagn 1030, and spoilers, Mr. T110E3 is not really going to do very well from this scenario. I don't even really need to shoot the player in the tracks anymore. We're just going to give them a little bit of a bump so they can't turn around. Maybe a little bit of a back-to-back situation there. Maybe I was feeling a little bit salty about the fact that the T110E3 had locked us down for so long. But it looks like we had the last laugh. And here you're finally going to get to see the M48 with the full field mods. Look at this, 51 kilometers an hour there, slowing down now to the 48 as we're making our way up the slope. And it's just so nippy. It baffles me as somebody who's played 1,000 games in this tank before it had that kind of mobility buff. Now that I'm literally driving around at 50 to 52 kilometers an hour and even going upslope at about 35 to 40 there, it definitely doesn't feel as if it's that slow medium tank anymore, and it's revolutionized the way that I've been able to play my M48A5 Patton recently. Okay, so I'm expecting there to be a Stridsvagn 1030 up in that corner because he didn't shoot me when he was up in the north. And what I didn't expect, however, was the Object 268 to be in this scenario. So we're just going to lock their tracks down and try and figure out what we should go for right now. Are we going to track the player? Are we going to shoot the back of their tank? Why don't we do both at the same time? And I'm thinking, well, where's that Stridsvagn 1030? Luckily, it looks like he's engaged with the Basonti down the side of the map, and we're able to just give the 268 a little bit more of a shunt to be able to keep that player tracked. And this 268 He's trying to aim, I guess, at the Tiger too, but he just can't do anything while he's tracked in that scenario. Very unfortunate, but that is where the M48 can be awesome. And like all medium tanks, it does very well at locking down tank destroyers that don't have turrets. And since I've boosted the mobility of this vehicle so it can make the more flashy plays against the turrets, well, against the non-turreted tanks, that's where the M48 has just been so strong for me. I truly think that the thing that held me back for so long in the M48 was the speed of the vehicle. Now that you can keep up with vehicles like the SDB-1, but have the real strong hull armor that doesn't get overmatched like on the Japanese medium tank, it's made the M48A5 the heavy medium tank that it always wanted to be. Alright, so we're loading in now on Live Oaks. And this is a bit of a toss-up for me. You'll see that I'm going to have a dilemma about what kind of equipment I want to use on the vehicle. I'm going backwards and forwards. Do I want to take the gun rammer or do I want to take the commander's vision system? And I'm actually going to finish by using the commander's vision system because I truly feel that trying to get the vision out in these kind of thick trees and these shrubs and also the enemies who like to sit at the back of the map over here, it's going to be the most useful. You also see that I'm trying to communicate with my team, asking them if we can win the dip, please. If you're playing Live Oaks and you want to go and take the dip, it's really important that you let your team know. And you'll see that I'm kind of disappointed that I see the CS63 not going for the dip, but at least the Kranvang's going to come to back me up. And even the Badger says they're going to back me up, which gives me big thanks. Now I also want to highlight that I'm using a premium medkit here. I switched it out. I use premium medkits when there's at least 2 or 3 artillery, and I use standard medkits when there's an artillery or there's none, just to be able to save a few extra credits. So this is where this mobility build in the Patton is really going to help me out. And that is that we're going to be able to contest the most important location on the map, which for me is the dip. Also, let me highlight the situation that I was currently on 94.8% mark of excellence. Am I going to sit at the back and try and just hope that things go my way and try and get some soft damage? No, I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to take my most played tank of all time, and now we're in a situation where we're going to have to fight in Mortal Kombat at the beginning of the game against this chieftain. Luckily, we managed to track them with our very first shot, and I don't know what they're really thinking in this scenario. I guess they thought, hey, I'm in a chieftain, I can go into the dip. But luckily for me, I'm safe from their artillery, they are not safe from my artillery, and with that second track, all it takes is 1 artillery shell, and that is 1 dead chieftain at the beginning of the game. We blocked 2 rounds there from the chieftain. We're going to put a round into the back of the M48, and we're going to use this lovely little nook that I have been using recently here, which is very decent indeed, to just keep bouncing and just keep grinding out. And it looks like that M48 maybe just gave up. That is how you win a game. Right from the beginning, we have managed to pick up the entirety of 2 tanks. Now, I'm not going to suggest that it was only me. Clearly, the Badger and the Kranvang helped me out in the EBR with some vision. Massive thank you to those 2 players. You can get more players to help you out with things like that if you're feeling social at the beginning of the game and you want to communicate with them with what the plan is. I would have gone into the dip come what may, because maybe I would have been able to fight out in a 1 versus 1 scenario there. The only time that I wouldn't have gone in the dip is if I didn't have the Badger and I didn't have the Kranvang behind me. I was going to go in to try and cement that position, because I know that once you've managed to get this position, you're so much safer from artillery than you are sitting above. You might as well be in the open when you're up on the ridgeline, then you're not going to be doing too well. So in this scenario, I really feel that the commander's vision system is going to really help against the Leopard and the Gorilla. Now, I'm not sure if I'm the one spotting the Gorilla. I guess we'll have to take a look to see if we manage to get any assistance damage on either of those 2 tanks. But I just feel that while I lost a little bit of DPM in the gunfight that was in the dip, the mobility to be able to get there saved me possibly taking some damage or even just getting locked out completely from contesting the early position. And now, having won that position, a commander's vision system on a very bushy map like Live Oaks is going to help me more than a gun rammer will be able to. And if you want to try and pump your experience up, and you want to try and pump your marks of excellence up, and you want to try and pump your assistance up through it, right, I would strongly recommend having the builds that I have showcased today, with the opportunity and that flexibility to have the commander's vision system available. And it's not as if the damage... Oh, nice ghost shell, by the way, there. Thank you, Wargaming. That one literally went right through the hull of the EBR-105. But oh well, hopefully it's not going to come back to haunt us later on in the game. But hopefully what I'm showing you here is that we have our DPM build for those DPM maps, and we have a commander's vision system build for our bushy maps. And by having the field mods unlocked and having that flexibility, I think one of the most stupid things that anyone could do right now is to not have two kinds of equipment on their vehicle and then to make them flexible for the situation that you're going to have to get yourself into. One of the reasons why Wargaming put field mods in the game is because they don't want to have those awkward situations where you're playing a light tank on a city map and you have focused all of your equipment on vision, or alternatively when you're playing a medium tank and you get on a snipey map and then you don't really want to have that kind of combat capacity. Maybe it's now more important to focus on vision, which is why I have set the vehicle up in this way. So there's the E50M, sorry, not the E50M, there's the EBR. I love that voice line. It's my favorite voice line in the game. The American female voice acting, I think, has to be the best in World of Tanks. That gotcha is just something that is just absolutely wonderful there. And now we're just sitting in the dip, bouncing damage, making damage. This is what the M48A5 Patton is all about. And in this situation, I know I've only got 500 hit points left, but what have I really got to lose? We're going to track the TVP on the move, turn in towards the building to be able to avoid him auto-loading us. He's going to come around the corner, bounce another round off the side of our tank. We're going to take no damage from the artillery. Thank you, M48A5 Patton armor. We're going to put a round into the bat chat, spot out the Grilla, get full spotting on the GWE 100, sorry, not the Grilla. And now we're going to bounce one more shot from the TVP as our team are going to finish him off. Or am I going to get a top gun? No, our team is going to finish them off. And that was, within 6 minutes, 6,800 damage and 3,000 assistance as well. And I have to admit, this was a real good feeling for me. A tank, my most played tank in World of Tanks, which was sitting there at 94.8% mark of excellence. And instead of kind of wilting and kind of not wanting to go into the dip just because there's a chieftain and there's an object 260 and a Kranvang on the enemy team, taking our vehicle and making our plays to complement the team and just take this one down, it was definitely one of my highlights in World of Tanks. So with the first game, I wanted to show you how the M48A5 can bully its opponents inside a nice matchup. In the subsequent games, which all happened on the same day, which was the 22nd of November, I wanted to show you how the M48 with this build can still do damage while still doing big spotting as well, while having the mobility with this build to harass and be opportunistic as we were on airfield, and then to just be the all-round dominant Beast Lord tank with 6,800 damage and 5 kills and still 3,000 spotting, getting us a patrol duty medal as well in our final game to pick up our 3rd mark of excellence. I would attribute the recent resurgence in my gameplay in the M48A5 to finally setting it up correctly. It was always a tank that truly benefited from its 420 meters view range. That meant that it never had to take coated optics. However, it was only Equipment 2.0 that provided other opportunities rather than using vertical stabilizers, which again, aren't really mandatory on this tank because it already has good gun handling to begin with. I truly think that this is one of the biggest advantages the M48A5 Patton has, is that you can invest so much into other areas without sacrificing the holistic nature of the tank. And also, I think that it has benefited massively from the field mods being able to sacrifice extra view range to be able to pump up its lowly top speed, mitigate what was previously atrocious camera rating on this tank to sometimes remain hidden getting into position, and buff up the repair speed of the vehicle so I'm not so afraid about over-angling and absorbing shots with my tracks. So while undoubtedly the field modifications and Equipment 2.0 have kind of given the M48A5 Patton a new lease of life, at least for me, if I was to reset my account right now, would I play another 1,400 games in this tank? And more importantly, would it be QuickyBaby's most played vehicle? I hate to break it to you, Patton fans out there, but probably not. While the vehicle is not terrible inside the game, and personally for me, I find its gameplay really fun, the problem that the M48A5 is facing is that there are now heavy tanks in the game that are just as fast as it, but they have autoloaders as well, like the VZ55 or the Kranvang, for example. This means that the M48A5 doesn't really have that unique kind of all-purpose variety gameplay, while being a slower medium tank that had a little bit more chonky armor. The heavy tanks are kind of doing that as well. And so accordingly, while this kind of pains me, I probably wouldn't recommend the M48A5 Patton as a must-have in World of Tanks. But nevertheless, with hopefully what I've shown you in the video today, and maybe a few of the recommendations for setting the vehicle up, there's no doubt that it can still shine. So that's it for today, ladies and gents, boys and girls. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Masterclass focused on the M48A5 Patton. If you did and you want to see more of them, make sure you give the video a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know what you think about the M48A5 Patton in the comments down below, and if there are any modifications that you would make to the tank outside of what I have presented. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.